Most of the money made in the stores today is games, about 50%, and a very, very small, like 0.001% of the people make most of the money, like 80% of the money. So figuring out how to get the economics moving forward in the right direction, trying to provide flexibility, trying to, as a community, figure this out is something we're very focused on. So there's the technology. Let us use as much or let you use as much as possible from what you know. And then there's the economics. Let's try and figure out how to make this as positive for everyone as we can. Now, I'm going to switch gears and I'll go to the other side now, which is the cloud side. We talked about symmetry and we talked a little about devices. On the cloud side, the first thing says sort of cloud design point. What I would say there, and I think John would probably say the same thing, is 5 years ago I worked in server and tools business before going to run OEM. At that time, if you asked me, I would say the mindset of that group and organization was on-premise first, cloud second. We were doing a lot of cloud work, but it was sort of where we were in our history. If you ask me today, we're for sure the mindset is cloud first, on-premise second. Not that one is deprecated or one is worse. It's just sort of the starting point. So the starting point is cloud first. The second thing is running the second, world's largest set of websites, or more importantly, services. We know a lot about running at scale, right? Whether it's the Xbox Live, whether it's Hotmail, we've been running services at scale, Bing, et cetera, for a long time. So taking the learning from that, using that as the starting point as we build out Azure, and then in parallel with that, our on-premise, there's a lot of value in that symmetry. Because then the second thing that comes up is you get to choose where you deploy. So for a lot of our commercial customers or people who have data and applications on site, they might not want to move the whole application off premises. So that symmetry of being able to deploy an app on-premise or off-premise, or more importantly, part of an app on-premise or off-premise, secure it the same way, authenticate it the same way, manage it the same way, that has a lot of value to a lot of people who have apps out there today. The notion of sort of rip and replace and just put it all in the cloud, that just doesn't work for everyone. And so while it takes a little longer to build, we've spent a lot of energy on having symmetry, again, between private cloud and public cloud, or on-premise and off-premise, which is the second part. The third, which I doubt a lot of people know, is it's actually a very open platform, the work we've done with Azure. I think you got a little bit of that this morning. You saw some of the demos, but you see Hadoop on the slide. You see Java, Linux. Like if you want to host a Linux VM inside of our Azure cloud, you can do that. If you want to use Hadoop, if you want to use Node.js, there's a whole bunch of things that we've done to enable interoperability in a very open way with open standards. There's a group inside of Microsoft called Microsoft OpenTech. Probably not very well known. It's a separate company, but it's wholly owned subsidiary. Their whole focus is to go work with the open source community. They either contribute to projects, and they actually work with our Microsoft teams, or we work with other partners to try and get projects that are outside of Microsoft onto the Microsoft platform. John gave one example earlier. And that work is done in a way that allows us to interact very broadly with the open source community and allow us with Azure to be as open as possible. And then last but not least, I sort of spoke about the scale that we operate. I talked about enterprise class or enterprise ready in terms of scale. Now, there's nothing more enterprise ready than Halo 4 the day it goes live and doing Halo 4 live support. And Halo 4 runs on Azure. When you play live, that's all running on Azure. And if you take that down, that's mission critical for my 15-year-old, and I assume many other 15-year-olds out there. We also run, for example, Office 365, though, if you take the other end of the spectrum. If you take email down for an organization, that also ends up being about the most mission-critical app. Both of us can tell you inside of Microsoft, you do not want to be the CIO or the person who takes email down, because the notes you'll get back are highly entertaining. So on the cloud side, to complement the client side, there's a bunch of work we're doing with Azure. There was a session this morning, but we wanted to, again, do a quick set of demonstrations from John on the Azure side to sort of complement the client side. So I'm going to hand the mic over.
Thank you. All right. So as Steve talked about, one of the things that's been going on with these modern apps is the importance of the cloud in managing the state and the connectedness between these different applications. So what I've got here is a pretty straightforward managed application. Let's just run that. And what we've done here is it's using some of the data from the cloud in terms of maps and so on. But really the way to think about this right now is it's a local app. We're going to allow it to pick up our location, assuming everything works here. It'll probably find us inside of, there we are, around the MGM. So this is all live. And you can see that the app's got certain kinds of interactivity. Now, I can go add, for example, a place, and this could be because we're trying to create some kind of social app, or maybe this is some kind of logistics application, and I want to go add a place, and I want to coordinate that across folks. Now, for many developers, putting together an app like this and getting it cloud ready, that can be a lot of work to do. So one of the things we recently introduced in Azure is a new set of technologies called Azure Mobile Services. Azure Mobile Services work across all of the different devices, Android, iOS, phone, Windows 8, and we've made it incredibly easy for people to augment their applications with additional cloud capabilities. So let me show you kind of how easy that is to go do. The first thing is we got to go up into the cloud, and here's the Azure portal. And you can see I've created a particular mobile service called John's Places. Let me just show you kind of how easy this stuff is to create. I won't actually go create this thing, but you go mobile services, you say create, and you give it a name, something like Places, and that's mostly all there is to go create this thing. So that's what I've done. So let's take a look at John's Places. And as you can see, it supports a lot of different kinds of capabilities up in the cloud. It supports push notifications down to devices. It supports putting data up there, creating schedules, supporting identity integration with lots of different kinds of cloud services like Facebook or Google or whatever it happens to be. In this case, let's go create a Windows Store app. And what it does is it gives us the code necessary to go hook this thing up into our application. And as you can see, it's actually very simple. We've done all the plumbing behind the scenes, including all the security work, all the configuration work, so that once you've entered this line of code into your app, you largely have everything you need to do to run the app. So let's go back to our app, and I'm going to go to the main page, and I'm just going to go paste in what we did. So what this does is it creates a new mobile service, it connects it up to John's Places, and it gives the appropriate token so that we can go access it. Now what I'm going to go do is in my app, there's an on-click method where I go and create that new location. And so what I need to do is I need to go talk to that mobile service. Well, that's pretty straightforward. It's actually just one line of code. And that is the line of code. We're going to do an await. That's the new asynchronous programming model because this is going to be happening across the net. We want to make sure that that works well. We go to the mobile services, we get the place table, and we go insert a place. Place is just something in our data model. It's just a pretty straightforward structure. The other thing that I'll want is when I start up the app, I'd like to be able to look at the places, right? So here's the main page where we go do that. Right now, I'm just initializing it with an empty set of places. That's where my results are. Let's change that to go get our places from the cloud. And I got a little macro that'll do that. And again, single line of code. What we do is we go get the places table. But here what we've done is we've used link to set some constraints on it so that we can set the diameter, the radius of the search area that we're going to go look for. And we're actually ready to go. So think about this. We've taken a classic client app. We've added essentially 3 lines of code to that app. We've connected up to Azure Mobile Services. And there we go. Now if I go and I click on this, let's put one over here. We'll go add a place there. I'll go add another place right nearby. And we've now created 2 places. Now, what's interesting about that is those places have been transmitted up to the cloud. So let's go look back now at the Azure dashboard. And what we can see here is if we go look at our data, here's our place data. And you can see that those 2 values have been transmitted and are up there and available. So there, that's it. We've just transformed a kind of traditional, you might even think of as a VB-style app, up to be a cloud-enabled, connected application by using Azure Mobile Services to enable that. Now, as we talked about, in many cases, people are going to have a wide range of devices. In this case, I put this together using a the Windows Store app, here's an example of the different kinds of apps. We could have done this for Windows Phone, could have done it for iOS. Here's Android, and as you can see, connecting up to Android is not much more complicated. It's about the same exact set of lines of code to go talk to that on Android. I happen to have a Galaxy 4 device, and what we've done is we've used the Galaxy programming environment to go create the equivalent, and it's probably a little hard to see, but notice here I'm using the standard native map control on Android, which is Google Maps based. And you can see the 2 points that I ended up creating before. It's probably super hard to see. As a way to illustrate that, let me do one thing, which is I'll go add a new point on the Android device. So let's just add that. So we've now added a point from the Android device. Let's go back to the cloud again. If we looked in the data, we'd see it. But I'm going to switch to this app. And I'm going to do one quick thing, which is I'm going to refresh. And notice that new point that I just got created got added. And as we talked about, we can change the search radius and so on. So if I were to, for example, shrink the search radius, we only see that one point. So there's a quick example of using the cloud not only to extend existing apps, but then to connect together and stitch together an experiences across many different platforms. And Azure ends up being a great way to pull that together with very, very low effort. So, perfect. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, one switch back here. Bingo. All right, so we did front end and we did back end. I thought John did a nice job cutting across. Let's get past this. The one thing that I'd point out is, look, we obviously work with lots of customers. I think sometimes people assume, hey, you know, we're going to go do everything all at the same time. Look, even for us, it doesn't work that way. There's a number of customers here who have built on Azure on the back end and haven't built a Windows Phone or Windows 8 app yet. I'd love them too. That's part of our job. We'll go talk to them. But they started from a particular point, and we'll go work from there. There's others that have built client apps in here, you know, Windows Phone or Windows 8, but haven't built Azure or haven't built the other one. One of the things we're working on is giving people a chance to come in from any endpoint, trying to give them the most flexibility and capability as possible, and then over time work on how does it make sense, or how do we work with them to enable more capabilities, more options across devices, whether there are devices or others, and across the cloud, whether it's all of our back end or others. And so one of the things I'd highlight is, you know, we'd love to have a conversation with each and every person out there about doing everything one way, but the world's not like that, and we understand that. So the key is there some place that we can have a starting point that makes sense, right? Do we have technologies that are of value, either on the client side, on the server side, in the cloud? Where's embedded? Where's a good point to start? The other thing, of course, it would be wrong to do, since this is the Visual Studio Conference, is to not talk anything at all about Visual Studio. So I put in one slide. I won't say much other than John did all of his demos in Visual Studio, which makes sense, right? There's sort of three things. One, we try and work with as broad a set of languages as we can. We always have. Two, obviously, it supports a wide range of devices and programming models, not just our own. You saw John there writing to other devices pretty easily. And three, it's part of the work to be part of the work we do with the open community as well. Hopefully most of you saw with the Team Foundation services, we did the deal or the arrangement with GitHub, so now you can host GitHub projects and Team Foundation services and be able to go back and forth. So there is a lot of work that we do to work within the open source or the community at large to make sure we can do as many things as possible, including in our tools. But given this is a Visual Studio Conference and almost all the sessions are there, that's about as much time as I'll spend on that. Again, I spoke earlier about Build, June 26th to 28th. Pretty excited about that. The last Build we did was in October in Seattle. It sold out in about an hour. We have more space because we got Moscone Center, which hopefully gives us a couple of days at least. But we'll see how quick it goes. Should be a good event. Things are moving quickly. There's a lot of conversations going on. Whether it's Windows, whether it's Visual Studio, whether it's Azure, whether it's some of the other products, there's just a lot to talk about. So we want to make sure we work on the cadence by which we're engaging broadly with the community. Obviously, if you can't come in person, we'll use Channel 9 to make sure we get everything out there from the conference. So With that, I wanted to sort of stay high level today, which I think I did, and John helped me sort of dig in a little bit. There's obviously the dev centers you can go to for Windows, Windows Phone, Azure. Bit.ly, Modern Apps Live, that's where the code from John's demos will be. And then, of course, buildwindows.com. So with that, I want to thank you again for your time. I want to thank you for your partnership and support. Hopefully, we're providing some of the tools as well as technologies that are helpful for you, both on the client side as well as in the cloud side. And as you go through this Modern Apps event and the Visual Studio event, I wish you the very best for the rest of the time. Thank you so much.